of certain goods have soared during the pandemic. We saw the price of masks rise sharply as demand increased, and now the same is happening to certain food items. Buying ginger these days can cost anywhere between 250 and 350 rand per kilogram, almost double the price prior to COVID-19. Retailers say that this is due to an increase in demand and a shortage of available supply. For more on this, we speak to James Hodge, Chief Economist from the Competition Commission. James, thank you very much for your time and welcome to eNCA. The rationale that increased demand justifies doubling the price of an item, surely it's tantamount to retailers holding South Africans hostage.
Well, I think we do see changes in demand, and garlic and ginger have been subject to that. But I think, as you rightly point out, there's a real question about the retailer margin in this debate. So it doesn't justify, in our view, 250 rand a kilogram. I mean, we know from reports that at the fresh produce markets, for instance, it's under 200 rand a kilogram. So adding another 180 rand to the price to us is inexcusable. So I think the retailers can't pass it back on supply and demand alone. They need to look at their own margin in all of this.
We also have to look at the supply chain. Most of our ginger is imported, so we can understand that increased import prices are outside of our control. But what is an acceptable profit margin, like you were saying, or a markup margin for local retailers? Have you done investigations into these price increases to see what retailers are adding on to that?
So we have been monitoring food prices, in particular, some of the essential nutritional food products over the entire COVID period. So, for instance, ginger prior to the pandemic was in the range of sort of 40, 60 rand a kilogram at the fresh produce market. Even if you add 50% on that, you're looking at adding a 20, 30 rand profit margin, not a 180 rand profit margin. And that's why we have responded already to the complaints circulating on social media and initiated investigations of a number of these retailers and their pricing.
Last year, the Competition Tribunal reached an agreement with food lovers market Westgate after the store admitted to charging excessive prices for raw ginger. First of all, is that correct information that we have, and what's since become of that agreement?
So that is correct, and there have been a number of other complaints around it. So there would have been enforcement against that, and food lovers would have paid a fine. I think what's more required at this stage is a comprehensive view across the national chains as to their pricing practices for essential food products and nutritional food products. I think a question that's been raised globally now is that, at least for low-income households, it's not just about getting a sufficient calorie intake a day, it's the mix of nutritional foods that enable you to have a healthy immune system and to fight pandemics such as this. Because I think we're seeing there's a disproportionate, impact on those that aren't able to afford a nutritional diet. So I think that is something that needs to be looked at more comprehensively. The national chains must stop to pause to think about what they're doing on fresh food pricing in generally. And that's certainly a focus that we have going forward.
As you so very rightly point out, these are essential items that everyday South Africans need in order to protect themselves from this pandemic. And that extends to things like masks, sanitizer, which we've also seen price increases. This is a global phenomenon, as you've also alluded to, but how can we enable the Competition Commission to react quicker so that we can see adjustments in pricing sooner, so that, to the benefit of consumers?
I think what we saw in the initial wave was an enormous consumer response that I think is unprecedented in South Africa's time, that consumers sought to hold retailers to account over their pricing. And we investigated 1,800 complaints in that period. Now, the second wave and I suppose the fatigue that consumers have at this stage means that we're not seeing the same level of interaction. And I think what would help most is that consumers get out there and notify us of pricing that they believe is excessive. Because much like the first wave, the